immortal souls. Subhumans, it was believed, are beings that lack that special something that makes us human. Because of this deficit, they don't command the respect that we, the truly human beings, are obliged to grant one another. They can be enslaved, tortured, or even exterminated, treated in ways in which we could not bring ourselves to treat those whom we regard as members of our own kind. This phenomenon is called dehumanization. It is the subject of this book. Before I began to investigate dehumanization, I assumed that there was substantial research literature devoted to it. The fact that dehumanization is mentioned so frequently, both in popular journalism and in academic writings, led me to believe, wrongly it turned out, that it had already been extensively studied. Then, as I began to hunt for writings on dehumanization, it dawned on me that although scholars from a wide range of disciplines are convinced that dehumanization plays a crucial role in war, genocide, and other forms of brutality, writings on the subject are shockingly thin on the ground. I found that it's usually mentioned only in passing, a page here or a paragraph there. Apart from a few dozen articles by social psychologists, there is scarcely any literature on it at all. If dehumanization really has the significance that scholars claim, then untangling its dynamics ought to be among our most pressing priorities, and its neglect is as perplexing as it is grave. I wrote this book to bring dehumanization out of the shadows and to jumpstart a conversation that is centuries overdue. To do this, I've drawn from a rich palette of sources, including history, psychology, philosophy, biology, and anthropology, to paint a portrait of dehumanization and the forces and mechanisms that sustain it. It's sometimes said that dehumanization is a social construction that's at most a few centuries old. According to this story, dehumanization was, paradoxically, a child of the doctrine of universal human rights. This idea was the moral and political touchstone of the Enlightenment, but it conflicted with the brutal colonialism perpetrated by Europeans. As the example with which I began this chapter suggests, the dissonance between theory and practice was resolved by denying the humanity of the oppressed. This story expresses a truth, but it is a partial truth that obfuscates the real nature, history, and extent of the dehumanizing impulse. Dehumanization is neither uniquely European nor uniquely modern. It is far more widespread, vastly more ancient, and more profoundly intertwined with the human experience than the constructionist view allows. To understand its workings, it's not good enough to examine some contingent facts about a particular historical period. We must look much deeper. Of course, particular manifestations of dehumanization are social constructions, in the sense that they appear in a given culture and historical epoch, which leave their distinctive stamp on it. 18th century Europeans embraced a certain type of dehumanization, but so did the Athenians during the 4th century before Christ, the Germans of the 1930s and 40s, and the Apo tribesmen of Highland New Guinea, who refer to their enemies as dung flies, lizards, and worms. In this book, I will argue that dehumanization is a joint creation of biology, culture, and the architecture of the human mind. Grasping its nature and dynamics requires that we attend to all three elements. Excluding any of them leaves us with a hopelessly distorted picture of what we are trying to comprehend. Dehumanization is too important a topic to be left to the experts, so I've tried to make this book appealing and accessible to a broad general readership, while at the same time addressing the concerns of specialist scholars in several disciplines. In doing this, I've done my best to balance academic rigor with engaging prose, on the principle that anything worth explaining is worth explaining in a clear and interesting way. In general, I've avoided technical jargon as much as possible and have